All right. So we begin. All right, so first thing we do is we're going to edit our image. We're going to edit through, and when I say edit, I mean not retouch. A lot of people have a misconception of what editing is. Editing, in my opinion, is actually harder than retouching. I have a hard time going through and selecting the best images. And just like we just did, finding that the right image to use. Because sometimes if you spend 3 hours retouching something and then you go back and you're like, oh, this image was better, got a problem there, So when you're shooting for editorial, you only can publish one of that scene, right? So one of these double-page spreads. Of all those images, we can only choose one. So we're going to choose this one. And we're going to double-click. We're just opening this up in Bridge. And of course, there's a lot of other programs to use. But this is just my preference. When we bring it into Bridge, this is where we can, of course, adjust our white balance. And we can also make these other adjustments. Now, this white balance is pretty accurate, but see, when we go to the next step, what I want to really, really emphasize today is advanced color correction, which a lot of you guys probably don't do. I would assume, I bet all of you guys probably do overall color corrections, but not where you go in there and actually color correct every single color in the image. And that's exactly what we're going to do today. Most photographers negate that.
What version of Bridge is this?
It's Camera Raw 7.1,
Okay.
CS6.
Okay.
Okay. This looks a little cold to me, so I'm going to warm it up. Bring this up to 5,200 degrees. This histogram shows that it's pretty accurate exposure. This is actually a perfect exposure. If it gets too high to the right, it's blown out. Too low to the left, it's too black. This is pretty accurate. What's also cool is this dress is really, really well lit, which is hard to do in a black dress. Oftentimes they go black. But because we use the strobes with beauty dishes, they illuminated it. So I might add a little bit of saturation or see what it's going to look like desaturated. Could look kind of interesting. But even if I went black and white or desaturated, I still start off in full saturation and then desaturate with an adjustment layer. So I may alter my shadows to add some contrast, but I don't really like that too dense. But I would say, because I don't want to lose too much of the dress, so I'm just going to bring them down slightly. And the exposure is accurate. Everything's good. I may adjust shadows and blacks in here, and I may adjust the temperature in here. But this looks pretty good. I'm also going to make it a little sharp, because even though this is razor sharp as I shot it, I'm going to go to Detail, Sharpening. I'm going to bring this up to about 40. Okay. Open Image. And we're opening this in full resolution. It's 21 megapixel. And we work in sRGB. sRGB tends to be the color gamut of your computers, and it's also usually the color gamut for printing. So it's a very, very good color gamut to work in, and I definitely recommend it. For a long time, I worked in Adobe at 1998, RGB 1998, but then I had to always be converting it, and I don't want to have to do that. So, okay.
Pro Photo's the Bible, for a purist. It's got the biggest color space.
I want to be able to see the bottom of this. Sorry guys. This thing was on my 30-inch, and now this toolbar is messed up, so I can't see the bottom of it. What's that? It's not giving me the option. Say what?
Try to resize from the top, bring down a little bit, and just grab the top more.
Just grab the edge of the screen.
Grab this area right here?
Yeah, so you can grab the edge and just...
I can bring it this way, but to bring it down...
You can't grab it?
No, it won't let you. I've had this happen before. It's a really pain in the neck. There is an option to reset that.
Oh, that's the workspace?
Reset. The only thing with that is, will I have my sharpen only? Yeah, I probably will. Okay, here we go. Thank you. Good suggestion. Okay, so I'm going to drag this. So the first thing I'm going to do is I never want to work on my background layer, so I'm going to click this and I'm going to drag it, and basically, and there's also shortcuts for all of this stuff, but I'm going to just show you the actual way without all the shortcuts because there's a million of them. And I'm usually using shortcuts, so it's like really quick. But it gets distracting. So I'm going to, I dragged it down, I made a copy of it. This is the one we're going to work on. So the first thing we're going to work on is we're going to work on the facial retouching. I'm going to label it facial retouching. And we're going to start with a very specific way of doing it. And everyone has their own way of doing it, but I like to use the patch tool. Who here uses the patch tool? Does anybody?
The what tool, I'm sorry?
Patch?
Patch? No.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to see an area that's bumpy like right here, and I'm going to like just draw like a little lasso around it. I'm going to click the center of it, and I'm going to move it. And the reason I do this instead of the healing brush is I feel like it's very, very exact. I can really pick out specific areas, and I can move it around. Because really all we're doing is we're moving pixels around. We're just taking pixels and just shifting them. That's all this is. We're taking zeros and ones and moving them around. So I'm getting, you see how I'm just moving in this motion, clicking around certain areas. I can even zoom in. And those little bumps on her face, no matter how hard we tried with makeup, we couldn't get rid of them. So here we're going to have to get rid of them. And what's nice about this, as opposed to the healing brush, is we can really get rid of bumps without blending the bumps into the rest of the image. Because bumps are kind of hard to do with the healing brush. So this is our first round. We're going to go in and we're going to use the patch tool to get rid of all of this. And also areas like this is too bright and it looks funky. So we're just going to move it out of the way like that. And all we're doing is we're taking it and then clicking the center and then moving that selection. Down here, I'm going to probably go to the 20% clone stamp for this area. I want to go, so I'm going to just skip by that. We're going to go move around the lips a little bit, adjust those slightly. And these are real mild adjustments they're going to add up later. This area, you see that nose? That's a really ugly nose. So I'm going to adjust this way, move it up, and I can move along these lines with the patch tool, which I really, really, really like. Make sure you're always working on a separate layer too. Very important. And these shadows are kind of nasty. So we're going to be just moving them around. Absolutely, yeah. Tan lines are great. Sometimes with tan lines, I also use like a 30% clone stamp to soften them, and have them blend. It's a really great way to blend them. The other thing is in liquify, you see how her nose is this weird curvature here? I think she probably had a bad nose job. So with this, I would probably liquify. We're not going to do that yet, though. Her forehead's pretty flawless, but we can get rid of little hairs. This is another great use of the patch tool. Move to the side. Completely remove it. Move to the side. But overall, the makeup's really excellent, and her face is clean. She's young. This model's like 15. Moving around to see the rest of the image, getting rid of any other imperfections, getting rid of things like this wrinkle. Because the objective is to make sure these models look flawless, but still make sure that they look real. Because you don't want them looking porcelain. And a lot of times photographers that start, getting really into retouching, they go too far, and they end up making them look like porcelain. And you don't want that, You're right? Yeah. And then you have to go back and redo it.
Retouch, and after you realize it's
Yeah.
too much.
Too much retouch. Okay, so she's looking pretty good. And of course, you can spend all day doing this, getting rid of the hairs and stuff like that. I don't like hairy arms on girls. But we're pretty much set with her face. Now we're gonna move on to hers. This other girl's. Same thing. She looks pretty good. She's got some bumps and stuff. So we're gonna move in, and we're gonna get rid of. We're just drawing around the lasso.
Is there going to be a hair layer as well?
What's that?
Is there going to be a hair layer as well?
I don't understand.
Not a hair layer, like
Layer
are,
of hair.
are you going to mess with baby hairs or anything like that? Are those?
Hairs?
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll do hairs.
Okay.
Yeah, we're not to there yet though. It usually takes me a good 3 hours to retouch an image for publication. There's a series of steps that I like to take. And I'm usually going to, there's different methods, but I'm probably going to wait to the end to liquefy. See, I don't like this earring right here because it looks like it's coming out of her chin. And I want to move one way or another and see what it's going to look like. See, that looks a lot better. Getting rid of this zone, moving it over like that. And then you can just click over here, move it over like that. Boom, got rid of it. Very simplistic way. Just moving pixels around. It'll eventually save you enormous amounts of time and agony. There's another thing we can do too, is you can always like clone stamp at 100% and then layer mask it and then cut through the layer mask. I can get rid of this hair right now too. I mean, if I want to, I can kind of come in here, and I don't really like this, so I'm going to go this way, and I'm going to go up. I'm usually just working along the lines of the face. This little area. Seeing any imperfections. I don't really like this shadow either, so I want to get rid of this shadow.
It's amazing how you can move shadow easily.
Yeah.
with
Oh, very, very
this
easily.
is like
Yes. Just moving things around. A little bit too close there. So now this shadow is pretty nasty, right here by your eye. This one can be a little bit more of a challenge, but let's kind of keep going to the rest of this. The challenge is when you start lighting multiple models, it ends up being a little bit more complex with the shadows and where they're going.
Does the square pattern of the lasso makes help make it look like you haven't been there?
Well, yes and no. I mean, you can have different patterns if you'd like.
That's just the standard patch tool.
This is standard, yeah. This is kind of like the default, and I really, really like it. Just as a quick, this is just the quick like initial step. Okay, so areas like this too, it's bumpy. And then things like this get a little nasty. So I'm going to actually make another copy of this, and I'm going to call this eyeshadow.
Do you know what to be a copy of your last background?
I do. Okay, that worked pretty well. Especially if it's something that I think is going to be dangerous, like a harder thing to retouch. This is actually easier than I thought it was. Okay, so pretty good here. Again, I could go into more detail, but I think this is pretty good. I don't know if I like the shadow on coming from the earring, so let's get rid of that. The shadow doesn't need to be there. Okay, so this is a zone where this is getting kind of funky with this little shadow here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a copy of this. I'm going to do clone stamp, and I'm actually going to go 100%. Option click, sample. and then stamp over it. Then I'm going to do a layer mask, and you can basically cover it up, reveal none, and what we're going to do is we're going to come through and just paint it back over. So it opens it back up. And I like to do this a lot. Looks pretty good. I don't know what's going on here. Oh, that wasn't affected by it. Okay. But that's good. So we have this done, so I'm going to take these two layers, I click Command E, and they're merged together. Then I'm going to go in here, and I'm going to, we're going to switch now from basically the patch tool over to the clone stamp. And I usually go between 20 and 30%. And we keep mode normal. And I usually, hardness, I keep it very low, like 0 to 10%. And then the size, just depending on the size of the area you're retouching. So I'm going to do Option click, and I'm just slightly going over this. So I'm sampling something, and I usually go in a slightly diagonal motion. Make this slightly larger because we don't want too harsh lines here. So I'm just option clicking. And I love this. This is like one of my favorite ways of smoothing out skin. Because what it does is it's adding layers in a sense. It just the look of it, it's like makes it more dense. So it's like taking pixels and layering them over top of other pixels. And when doing so, it kind of like appears a bit smoother and softer, but yet it's not like too much.
Different colors, making somewhere is red, somewhere is making
You
it
have,
more
you
smooth.
have your brush set on, is it 20% opacity?
This is 30% opacity, but yeah, between 20 and 30.
So you're softening the skin with the
Clone stamp.
clone stamp?
Yep.
Okay.
And this is the primary way that I soften and smooth skin out, is with the clone stamp at 30% opacity.
So you're doing like all the heavy lifting with the
All the details with like really harsh, acne and moles and stuff like that, which these girls don't have moles, but I get rid of all of that with, or loose hairs and stuff. We can do that with the patch tool. And then I'm going to move into the clone stamp to get rid of, to just kind of smooth over everything. And I don't want to go too far.
I've seen this done. I like it.
It's how I've retouched every single image that you've seen of mine. Because a lot of your photography is also heavily to do with your retouching, as one of you guys said earlier today. Okay, and those little flyaways, I don't really like those, so I'm going to get rid of these with the patch. Okay, another thing I'm kind of seeing just off the bat is like her hair is big and beautiful, and hers is not. So I'm going to have to rectify that with the liquefy. Also get rid of that little speckle. Something on the sensor. And then these hairs, they can fly away. Get rid of that as well. But before I do that, I want to get rid of things like on her skin. I usually work from the face and move outwards.
Are you going to soften that shadow probably too?
Yes. And these are brutal shadows to fix. This is, it's lit beautifully, but it's got these harsh shadows that I need to get rid of. So I don't want that. Both this one and that one. So, okay, so we're starting to fix some of her chest. Let's fix that shadow. So we're going to call this chest shadow. And normally when I'm all said and done, I'll have like 40 layers or so.
How many layers?
About 40.
40?
Yeah. Oh, we're just in the beginning here.
You're a rand killer, man.
You see how that's taking care of this really nicely?
That's the patch tool.
Patch tool.
What you want to do is soften the transition.
Exactly. Softening the transition.
Did you ever try like when you switch over and using to fade that a little bit? Like, command shift fade the shape. You can fade that.
You can. I mean, there's, like I said, there's a million different ways of doing this. This is just my way. But there's, if you've got a better way, it's more power to you. It makes it easier for you. It's all about time, making sure that it's like efficient, and still maintaining the quality is really, really important. And just doing something that feels comfortable to you. So this is getting pretty close to how I want it. And then with the details, you can go in with the clone stamp. Option click. Yep, back to 20%. I went a little too far there. You have to be careful with clone and healing brush. If I go over this area like that, yeah, I don't want that. Gets rid of that earring. Or it'll take a sample and move it somewhere weird. So you don't want to do that. So, is this making sense, guys?
Yeah.
Okay, let's go over the shadow too. Same thing. And you'll have this video. When it's all edited and done and stuff, I'll send it to you guys. And you can see with the audio. Because it'll take you a little time to get through, especially when you get to the color aspect of it. That's like the really, really important stuff. This stuff I do in my sleep. Because it's kind of boring. Okay. So that's looking pretty good, So I might soften the arms a little bit here and there. And then get rid of areas like this. Sharpness in the elbows. Crease, any imperfection that I miss, I want to go back and fix.
That shadow one for you?
I'm actually okay with the shadow. That one, yeah, it's a good call. That one looks artificial, so I'm not okay with that. So there's two ways you can go with it. One way we could get rid of it and go dark this way, or we could get rid of this and go light this way. What do you think is going to look the best? Go dark?
I say light.
Well, we could do either way, but let's. There's a kind of a trans. I'd go dark and into light. I mean, there's definitely a transition there.
It's funny because only photographers appreciate this kind of stuff. You show this to your girlfriends or wives or whatever, and they're just like,
Now maybe what I'm seeing back here, but the screen could be at an angle. There's now maybe that line. You can see a cheekbone line in the back. See that?
This one?
There's a definite line now coming here. It's almost like a mask. So maybe that wasn't the thing. That's rough. See that? There's a line
I see the line, but I don't. It doesn't bother me that much. I mean, we can also soften it.
That's what I was saying.
So we could, patch it, move it, make it look more natural. Yeah.
That's what I was talking about.
Sure. I'm actually okay with this. It's pretty good. Okay, now we want to clone stamp her face, so I'm gonna option. And you don't want to do this too much because it starts looking really soft. There's also ways there's methods of utilizing Gaussian blur and stuff like that, but this is just my preference because I feel like it's very exact.
You can do put your clone stamp on lighten. to
Mhm.
like 10% and do that. But that's really touchy too with softening it too much.
Mm-hmm.
Or you can spend hours with that cold skin.
For commercial work, do you need to have it to the detail where you can see each eyelash for when you blow it up?
Yeah. Well, I would anyway.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't take shortcuts with post. It's always I want to portray my image as best as I can. I think it's very important.
You shot this with the Mark III.
Mark II. Okay, they're pretty much retouched. I want to get rid of that. I don't like that.
There's a weed in the bush along
Yeah, off of their heads. See, that's a really easy way to remove.